You're spending the summer at camp. One night, you steal out to the woods to find a lost arrow. Suddenly, a cloud covers the moon, and you are magically transported to Sherwood Forest. Standing face to face with a man dressed all in green, it's Robin Hood, and he needs your help. The Sheriff of Nottingham has captured Maid Marian. How can you help Robin Hood? If you volunteer to join an attack on the castle of Nottingham, turn to page 68. If you want to try a secret rescue operation, turn to page 62. Remember, Robin Hood's men are outlaws. If you join them, you'll be an outlaw too, and the sheriff will have no mercy. What happens next in the story? It all depends on the choices you make. How does the story end? Only you can find out. And the best part is that you can keep reading and rereading until you've had not one, but many incredibly daring experiences.
Hello, and welcome back to Let's Play Gamebooks. Today's book, Choose Your Own Adventure number 47, Outlaws of Sherwood Forest, by Ellen Kushner. Illustrated by Judith Mitchell. Camp stinks. Your parents said, "Go, dear, you'll have a wonderful time meeting other kids and roasting marshmallows." They didn't say anything about giant mosquitoes and cramped cabins and forced swims in ice-cold water. So, like a fool, you went. The place is called Camp Yucky-Phooey, but to you, it's Camp Yucky-Phooey. Most of the other kids are creeps. Just because this is your first year, they treat you like a second-class citizen, and they're always trying to get you in trouble with the counselors. To make things worse, the food really stinks. Everything's covered with this gooey cream sauce, so you can't tell how badly it's been burnt. You wish you could disappear. Well, actually, you wish everyone else would just disappear, because the area is really kind of pretty. The camp is surrounded by a deep, dark forest, and there's a clear stream running through it. You'd like to walk off into those woods and never come back. But then they'd probably call out the dogs or the FBI and corner you like a rat, and the kids would laugh at you, and your parents would cut off your allowance for life. Only two things make life bearable: your new camera and archery practice. The camera was a birthday present from your parents. It's a pocket Instamatic with a built-in flash, and you carry it with you everywhere. Imagine carrying a camera with you everywhere. Like that would ever happen. Archery is great because you turn out to be very, very good at it. The best in camp. And Judy, the archery coach, says that if you keep practicing hard, you'll soon be as good as she is. Today, you've got permission to skip team sports so that you can practice some more. You have 5 white arrows in your quiver, and your 6th is notched and ready. You aim carefully. Just as you release the shot, a soccer ball comes flying from the nearby field and hits you in the back. Your shot goes wild, and your favorite arrow flies off into the woods. There's nothing to do but go search for it. 15 minutes later, you're still looking. In the distance, you can hear the arts and crafts counselor yelling that it's time to go make igloos out of popsicle sticks. If you ignore her and keep looking, you might get into trouble. But if you leave the arrow in the woods overnight, the morning dew will ruin it. Maybe you could wait until everyone's asleep and then sneak back and search for the arrow by moonlight. If you keep looking for your arrow, turn to page 17. If you decide to hunt for it by moonlight, turn to page 6. Let's just go after it. Makes sense to me. Ignoring the arts and crafts counselor's insistent calling, you plunge deeper into the woods, your eyes on the undergrowth. Still no arrow. Could you really have shot it this far? The trees are close together in this part of the forest, and it's hard to push your way between them. You're getting hot and sticky. Maybe it's time to give up and go back. But when you turn around, you can't even see the archery field. Vainly, you try to remember whether moss grows on the north or the south side of the trees. Not that it would help. You don't even know which direction Camp Yucky-Phooey is anymore. What you are is lost. Turn to page 7. Using your bow to push aside the tree branches, you try to make your way back to camp. But nothing looks familiar, and now you're really tired. Finally, you reach a clearing. Rich green grass dotted with flowers. The perfect place to rest. Gratefully, you sink to the ground. That's funny, you think. The flowers seem to be growing in a circle. But they smell wonderful. Bees are humming. The sun is warm. Before you know it, you're asleep. You open your eyes to find you're not alone. A tall, bearded man is standing on the other side of the clearing. He's dressed all in green with high leather boots, and he doesn't look like the sort of person your counselors would want you to associate with. You're about to run when he calls out, "Hold, knave! Are you a fool to trespass here in Sherwood Forest, or do you flee from the Sheriff of Nottingham?" Sherwood Forest? Nottingham? This guy must be nuts. Oh, of course, you know the legend of Robin Hood and his band of outlaws. They lived in Sherwood Forest. They were always being chased by the cruel sheriff of the nearby town of Nottingham. But that was supposed to be hundreds of years ago in medieval England, and it was only a story. Wasn't it? You're not sure what's going on, but you better give that big man an answer. He's holding a bow, and it's about twice the size of yours. If you think it's best to play along with him, turn to page 14. If you think your only hope is to run, turn to page 63. Let's play along. You think fast. This man's awfully tall. If this is supposed to be Sherwood Forest, and he's one of Robin Hood's men, then he must be... Little John, you say. I'm so glad to find you. Oh, are you? He says. And what business have you with John Little, that some do call Little John? You've guessed right. And he's answered just as in the books. As you recall, at this point, you're supposed to make a stirring speech about having traveled far to join the merry band and live in liberty under the greenwood, righting wrong and fighting injustice. So you do. Little John looks impressed. Well spoken, he says. You are welcome here in Sherwood. Poor little child, these be sad times indeed. You all alone and not even knowing better than to sleep in a fairy ring. He indicates the circle of flowers. They say if you fall asleep inside one of these rings, the fair folk may carry you off to some strange enchanted land. Turn to page 21. You can't believe that a grown man is warning you about little fairies, and you tell him so. Little John looks serious. Hereabouts we know better than to offend the fair folk, the good people. They don't much like the word fairies. Now let's be gone from this magic place before they hear us using that word and decide to do us some mischief. He really means it. And you have to admit that so far it's the only explanation for your presence here. You think for a moment. If this really is Sherwood Forest, and people believe in magic, you could become famous. After all, you come from the 20th century, where there's advanced technology. You could set yourself up as the king's advisor, or even as a great wizard. Lost in daydreams, you follow Little John through the forest. I fear you've come at a sad time, he tells you. There's terrible trouble. What is it? You ask. But he only sighs and says, nothing a mere child like you could help with. Now, if there's one thing that you just can't stand, it's being told that you're just a kid who can't do anything useful. So, if you tell Little John that you're really a powerful wizard in disguise, turn to page 59. If you decide to show him that a mere child can still be a good archer, turn to page 34. Okay, let's tell him that I'm a wizard. Mere child, you say scornfully. I'll have you know that I'm really a powerful wizard in disguise. Oh, you are you? Little John says. He fits an arrow to his bow and points it at you. Then back into the fairy ring with you while I decide what to do. You do as he says. This isn't going the way you'd hoped. But maybe your Instamatic will impress him. You take the camera out of your pocket. Beware of rousing a wizard's wrath, you say. You set the flash and take his picture. For a moment, he's shocked, but he's smart enough to realize that all you did is flash a light without hurting him. You try to follow up with some impressive-sounding magic words. Alakazam! Zippity-zappity-zoo! Nothing happens. You start to feel desperate. I before E except after C. E equals MC squared. By reciting the law of matter conversion, you seem to have triggered something in the fairy ring. Suddenly, Little John vanishes, and you're back at camp. The arts and crafts counselor is closing in on you, and you are in big trouble. Somehow, you make it through the rest of the summer. When you get home, you have your roll of film developed. Among the snapshots is a picture of a very tall man in green holding a very large bow. Who's that, dear? Your parents ask. Oh, you answer, just a visiting archery expert. The end. Okay. So, I guess it's not a good idea to pretend to be a wizard at this point in time. Let's go back and see what the other option would have done. Okay. I may be young, but maybe I can help, you say to Little John. At least let me try. Look, I can shoot. You fit arrow to bowstring, and you hit a distant birch tree. "Well shot!" he cries. "By Saint Sebastian! Perhaps we can use you after all." Then he looks worried. "Still, you are but a child. If any harm should come to you..." You grit your teeth. "Never mind about that. Tell me what's happened." Little John finds paths through a forest that looks like pure wilderness to you. As you walk, he tells you that Maid Marian, Robin Hood's own true love, has been captured by the Sheriff of Nottingham. The evil sheriff was Marian's guardian until she fell in love with Robin and ran off to the greenwood. Now that the sheriff has her back in his clutches, he is going to force her to marry Sir Guy of Gisborne. He vows that she'll never see Robin again, and to make sure she can't get away this time, he has locked her in the highest tower of his castle. So it looks as if Robin and his band will have to launch a full-scale attack to rescue her. If you volunteer to join the attack on the castle, turn to page 68. If you think a secret rescue operation would work better, turn to page 62. All right, let's attack the castle! Little John leads you to the outlaw camp, where the attack on Nottingham Castle is being planned. You meet the rest of Robin Hood's band, who welcome you into their number. You recognize some of the famous ones: Alan Adale, Friar Tuck, and Will Scarlet. The only one missing is Robin himself, but soon he arrives, leading a tall knight in black-plumed armor. "What cheer!" Robin calls out. "I have a guest for dinner, a stranger I found wandering in Sherwood Forest. But since he will not remove his visor to show his face, he must needs eat through the helmet." "Stiff-necked soul," says Will Scarlet. "Perhaps he'd like to try a game of buffets for the privilege of seeing his face." Friar Tuck explains to you that in a game of buffets, each man must stand still while the other one tries to knock him down with one blow. "It would have to be a fair face indeed for me to risk being struck by such a big man," Alan Adale says. But the others are eager to try their strength, and the Black Knight agrees to the trial. One by one, Robin and his men are defeated by the stranger. Even Little John, who seems so big, is sent staggering backward. Finally, you're the only one left who hasn't tried. If you challenge the Black Knight, turn to page 60. If you try to think of some excuse not to fight him, turn to page 51. Let's think of an excuse not to fight him. You rack your brains for a good excuse, but luckily nobody seems to expect you to challenge the Black Knight. After all, it's unlikely that you would have beaten him at the game when grown men have failed. For once, you're not sorry to be considered a mere child. "By Our Lady," says Robin Hood, "I know of only one man who could defeat so many, but alas, he is far across the sea." "What do you mean?" the knight asks. "I mean our good King Richard, who's away fighting in the Crusades," says Robin. "He is sorely missed at home, for his brother Prince John is a tyrant." "Beware," the knight says. "What you speak is treason." Robin laughs. "Ha! Not while I rule in Sherwood. Here any friend of Richard's is a friend to me, and his enemies are my enemies." "Then bid me welcome, friend," says the Black Knight, taking off his helmet. Robin Hood and his outlaws go down on their knees. It is King Richard. King Richard raises Robin Hood and the other outlaws from their knees. Then he explains that his brother John would like to keep him from taking back the throne, and that is why he must go about in disguise. But he feels safer already, knowing that Robin is on his side. He agrees to help rescue Marian from Nottingham Castle. "But," he says, "let us make no direct attack. Let us disguise ourselves as friars, join the next convoy that seeks to enter the castle, and take the sheriff's men by surprise." The disguises are arranged. Then you take a position along the road to watch for a large group going towards Nottingham that the friars can attach themselves to. Farmers go by with their carts, and milkmaids pass with their pails. Finally, along comes a large group of people riding horses and talking and laughing. "Hello," you call to them. "Who are you, and where are you going?" "We are pilgrims on our way to the holy shrine at Canterbury," answers their leader. "Will you be passing through Nottingham?" you ask. "Aye," says the leader, "right under the very walls of the castle." These pilgrims could give Robin's men cover as far as the city, but they aren't going into the castle itself. If you give the signal for your friars to join the pilgrims, turn to page 115. If you wait for a group that's going to the castle, turn to page 79. Let's wait for another group. Next to come along the road is an enormous train of knights, nobles, and servants, following a man wearing a crown. A herald is calling, "Make way for His Highness Prince John!" You give the signal, and Robin Hood, King Richard, and the other friars tag on to the end of the procession. Sure enough, you walk right into Nottingham Castle with Prince John and his followers. At dinner, you sit in the great hall at the opposite end from Prince John and the Sheriff of Nottingham. King Richard keeps his monk's hood over his head, but you notice Prince John looking at him strangely. Suddenly, John calls to him. "Come here, Sir Friar." Richard goes to him. Prince John looks under his hood and cries, "Guards, throw this man in the dungeon! His very look speaks treason!" Before anyone can make a move, the true king is hustled off to the dungeons. With Richard gone and so many guards present, it's too risky to fight now. By stealth and cunning, Robin manages to free Marian from the tower, but you all return to Sherwood Forest in a grim and worried state. It will take all your strength and careful planning to free Richard from the heavily guarded dungeon. Okay, well, that's didn't go quite the way we planned. What would have happened if we had gone with that first group instead? The friars fall in at the end of the caravan, while you stay up front, riding double with a chatty widow from Bath. She explains that along the way to Canterbury, the pilgrims are having a contest to see which one of them can tell the best story. Some of the tales are funny, some are sad, some tell of warfare and adventure, some of love. This sounds familiar. The story you're listening to is so exciting that you forgot to pay attention to where you're going. When it ends, you look around and discover that the friars have all gone. The widow says you passed through Nottingham 2 hours ago. You could walk back, but it would take forever on foot. By the time you got there, the battle would be over anyway. You decide to continue traveling with the pilgrims. If all the stories are as good as the last one, it will be fun. You can learn all about the people and their time, maybe even write down their stories, and get some extra credit in history or English. Of course, you'll have to tell a story yourself. Maybe you'll tell the magical tale of a person who's transported to Old England from the future. But will anyone believe it? The end. So, I guess attacking the castle just wasn't really a good plan to begin with. Maybe we should have gone back and seen if there was a way to rescue Marian through a more covert, subtle operation. I seem to have lost my little my place in the book. You need a lot of bookmarks when you read things this way. All right, here we go. So, a secret rescue operation. Let's go to page 62. Look, you say to Little John, there are better ways to solve this than with violence. I know, he scratches his head. There's cunning, stealth, schemes, plots, and disguises. You like the idea about wearing a disguise. And when John points out that you're about the same size as Marian, your plan is born. If you can just get the guards to let you into Marian's room, you can exchange clothes with her. And if you can pretend to be Marian long enough for her to get away, she can escape in your disguise. By the time the sheriff realizes he has the wrong person, it'll be too late. And he can't make you marry Guy. Little John thinks it's a wonderful idea. Now all you have to do is think of a good disguise. He says, "There's Marian's old nurse. Horrible woman. She could scold the stripes off a tiger. No one would dare to get in her way. Or you could go as one of the castle pages. I know where to get you a uniform, and there are so many pages, no one would notice an extra one." If you think the old nurse is a good disguise, turn to page 104. If you want to go as a page, turn to page 36. All right, turn to page 36 for the page. Little John finds you the clothing of a castle page. You put it on and follow him to the gate of Nottingham Castle. "Remember," he whispers before he leaves, "you've got to get Marian out soon or she'll be married to Sir Guy. If we don't see you in Sherwood by Whitsunday, we'll have to attack the castle, even if you're still inside. Now go on, and may the luck of the fair folk be with you." It's lunchtime in the castle, and people are scurrying around the big dining hall like mad. Sure enough, no one notices an extra page. They make you carry food to the sheriff and his friends at the high table, pour out wine, and take away dirty dishes. So being a page is sort of like being a waiter, except that you don't get any tips. You don't get to eat either. All this running around is making you very hungry, very thirsty too. Finally, someone hands you a bowl of sweet-smelling water to put on the table. It's not exactly Kool-Aid, but it's better than wine. Slipping behind a pillar, you take a nice long drink. Suddenly, a voice behind you cries, "What are you doing? That's rose water. It's for washing your hands." It's another boy, a page with freckles and a gap between his front teeth. "You'd better come with me," he says. Can you trust him? If he finds out that you're an imposter, he might turn you in. But you could sure use some help, and it would be nice to have a friend. If you try to get away, turn to page 19. If you go with him, turn to page 54. Let's get away. You walk quickly back to the tables, leaving the other page behind. There are dogs everywhere, waiting for people to throw them bones. You try to be careful, but a sudden yelp lets you know you've stepped on one's tail. A lady in gold turns around and hits you on the side of your head with a huge loaf of bread. Clumsy oaf! Take care! She picks up the dog, cooing, Did Mummy's precious darling get hurt? Your ear is still ringing with the blow when the lady shrieks, Don't just stand there, you fool! Go fetch my cloak, and be quick about it! Clearly, a real page would know where she kept her cloak, but for you, it's the perfect excuse to just leave the hall without being questioned. While that awful woman waits all night for her cloak, you can take the opportunity to learn your way around the castle. You go down a long corridor that ends in a door. Next to it is a staircase going upward. If you open the door, turn to page 41. If you go up the stairs, turn to page 108. Open the door. The door leads out into a large courtyard. Across from you is a great big gate, and someone is pounding on it from the outside. Who goes there? Calls the sheriff's guard. Open in the name of Prince John, a voice replies. His Majesty dines with the Sheriff of Nottingham tonight. You watch from the shadows as the guards work the enormous pulley system that opens the gate. All the while, you're trying to remember what you've heard about Prince John. In the Robin Hood story, he was the bad guy. His older brother, Richard, went off to fight in the Crusades and left him to rule England. At dinner, you overheard someone mutter, When King Richard returns, Prince John will have a lot to explain. And you recall that John oppressed the poor with the Sheriff of Nottingham's help. Well, if Robin was against John, and for Richard, I guess you'd better be too. Prince John seems to be leading an entire procession into Nottingham Castle. Behind him come knights, squires, nobles, minstrels, jugglers, and guards. Bringing up the parade is a group of barefoot friars. You realize you still have your pocket Instamatic with you. What a picture this would make. But what if someone sees you take it? If you decide to take a picture, turn to page 91. If you decide it's too risky, turn to page 56. Let's take a picture. You take out your camera. If you stay in the shadow of the wall, maybe no one will notice you. You look through the viewfinder. The procession is so large you'll have to take several shots to get it all in. You click and click and click away until you feel a hand on your shoulder. What toy is this, young page? The guard asks. It's my Instamatic, you say nervously. Some Latin word, perhaps, he says. I've no learning, not like you great folk. Well, get along to your duties. You'll have a chance to look at the prince at dinner. You're so nervous you can't keep from fiddling with the camera. Without meaning to, you push a button and the flash goes off. In the dark shadows, it seems very bright. Sorcery! The guard shouts. Help! Ho! A plot to assassinate the prince! Your trial comes between the dancing bear and dinner. The sheriff is impatient to get back to his important guest and start eating, so he makes it short. Because of your youth, I will be merciful, he says. You'll be hanged immediately instead of burned at the stake. The end. I guess they didn't like photographers back in the Middle Ages. Okay, so let's not take a picture instead. The courtyard is bustling with activity. It would be foolhardy to try and take a picture now. From your hiding place, you watch one of the friars drop out of the procession. Something in the way he moves makes you suspect he hasn't been wearing his robes long. He walks right toward you, and on a hunch, you step out of the shadows. Startled, the friar puts his hand to his side as though he were carrying a sword. When he sees you're just a page, he draws you back into the shadows and looks you straight in the eyes. He's very handsome. His eyes are piercing and his face is tanned. My child, he says, would you serve your king? You mean Prince John? You say, playing dumb. They say King Richard has returned from the Holy Land and stands in need of friends. What say you to that? Suddenly you know who this man must be. It's your big moment, and you play it for all it's worth. I say, down with wicked Prince John, you whisper dramatically. The man smiles. If you would truly serve the king, see that you serve at the prince's table tonight. Mark well what passes between him and the sheriff, and if you hear anything suspicious, bring word of it to me. But how will I find you, you ask? He smiles again. Oh, I'll be at the banquet, enjoying Nottingham's hospitality, he says. Now, will you do it? Yes, sir. I mean, sire, you say. For, of course, he is King Richard. You spend the next few hours looking for Marian and learning your way around the castle. No one you ask seems to know anything about her, and you don't want to seem too interested or people will get suspicious. As the evening draws on, the dining hall fills up for the banquet. You're kept busy fetching and carrying, and the prince's minstrels and jugglers are kept busy performing. There's even a dancing bear. King Richard is sitting at a low table, still wearing his friar's robes. As you promised, you're keeping an eye on his brother and the sheriff. You're about to set a big bowl of steaming soup on the table when Prince John leans over to the sheriff and says, "They tell me my brother has returned and travels about the country disguised as a friar, or a merchant, or a black knight." "No merchants here," says the sheriff, busily stuffing his mouth. "Please pass the salt." "That friar," says Prince John, pointing to Richard. "The one whose hood hides his face. Do you suppose—" You're sure that being recognized is not part of Richard's plan. Somehow you must stop John from speaking to him. You could warn the king of his brother's suspicion, but maybe the soup can provide a distraction. If you go to warn Richard, turn to page 67. If you spill the soup in Prince John's lap, turn to page 88. "Whoops," you say, dropping the bowl of soup all over wicked Prince John. The soup is very thick and very hot. "Imbecile!" the sheriff of Nottingham yells at you. He mops at the prince with his enormous silk handkerchief. You try to help and succeed in getting more soup over everyone. The sheriff whacks you with his wet hanky. "Clumsy oaf!" "It was an accident," you protest. "Accidents shouldn't happen to the King of England," snarls Prince John. "Yes, king! I said it and I mean it!" He rises and addresses the whole gathering. "By royal proclamation, I, John Plantagenet, declare myself King of England, and my brother Richard an outlaw. Furthermore, I set a price on his head, 1,000 gold marks, dead or alive." In the shocked silence, the friar rises to speak. "A fair prize," he says. "Let me be the first to claim it. Though 1,000 marks suit this head not half as well as the crown of England, brother." He throws back his robe to reveal a suit of armor. "Richard!" shrieks the prince. "Capture him, men!" The hall is suddenly bristling with the sheriff's guards. You're determined to fight alongside the king, but you have to admit the odds aren't exactly promising. Turn to page 111. Just when you think all is lost, the other friars throw off their robes. They're dressed in Lincoln green. It's Robin Hood and his men. "Down with Prince John!" they shout, rallying around the king. "Robin Hood!" cries the sheriff of Nottingham. 500 marks to the man who brings me Hayes' carcass!" The hall turns into a battlefield. John's men outnumber the outlaws, but many people hate the prince and are going over to Richard's side. With all the guards involved in the battle, now might be a good time to rescue Maid Marian. The sheriff is hiding under the table, and you threaten him with a turkey leg, an anachronistic turkey leg, until he tells you where to find her. Following the sheriff's directions, you race upstairs to Marian's tower cell. She's pounding on the door and yelling, "What's going on out there? Let me out!" "Hang on," you call. "I've come to rescue you." "Then hurry up and let me out," she replies. Suddenly you realize you forgot the keys. You'll have to go back and get them from the sheriff. Or maybe you can figure out how to break the door down instead. If you go back for the keys, turn to page 106. If you try to break down the door, turn to page 101. "Let's break down the door." "Stand back," you called Marian. "I'm going to break the door down." You pick up a pike staff one of the guards left behind. But before you can attack the door with it, Robin Hood comes running up the stairs. "Stand back," he calls to Marian. "I'm going to break the door down." "All right," you shrug. I guess he's the hero around here. With one blow of Robin's shoulder, the door shivers. With a second blow, it cracks on its hinges. Marian squeezes out through the crack. When she hears what's happening, she insists on going downstairs to join the fighting. You go down to find that the battle is already over, and the victory is Richard's. Everyone cheers when they see you with Robin and Marian. King Richard pardons all the outlaws and sends Prince John and his followers to the dungeons in chains. To you, the king says, "I owe you my life. If you accept a position in my court, you shall serve at my side and learn all noble skills, hunting, dancing, falconry, music, even reading and writing if you desire it." "Well," you hesitate, thinking of home. "Your clothes shall be of the finest satin and velvet," continues the king. "Many servants will wait upon you, and I shall give you a swift horse for my stable and a fine hound for my kennels." You accept. The end. That's a good ending. Except that I guess I'm kind of stuck in medieval times. But hey, it's still a pretty good ending. But what if I had decided to disguise myself as Marian's nurse instead of as a page? Let's go back. Little John gets a set of old woman's clothes from a farm wife. Their size is too large, so you pad them with rags and with a nice long rope for tying up guards or climbing down towers. You put on a bonnet, darken your face with berry juice, and draw on age lines with charcoal. Little John takes you as far as the walls of Nottingham Castle. Then he gives your shoulder a squeeze of encouragement and melts into the crowd. You totter up to the gate. "What can I do for you, grandmother?" asks the guard. Your disguise is working. You smother a smile and start to wail and carry on. "Oh, my lady, my little Marian, who I nursed since she was a baby. To see her in such a dreadful place, it breaks my poor heart." The guard isn't a bad sort. "There now," he says, "don't take on so. I tell you what, I'll take you to visit her." "Oh, thank you," you snivel. "Ever since she joined that awful outlaw Robin Hood, I haven't heard a word from her, not even a postcard. Maybe now she'll see the error of her ways." You follow the guard into the castle and up a winding stair to the tower. Suddenly he freezes. A fat man is coming toward you, and he looks meaner than the swim coach at Camp Yucky-Phooey. "Curtsy," hisses the guard. You try a trembling curtsy, and you fall flat on your face. The fat man laughs hysterically. When he finally can speak, he demands, "Who are you?" If you pretend you're a clown and fell on purpose, turn to page 24. If you act like Marian's old nurse, turn to page 27. "Shame on you!" cry. "Who taught you to laugh at poor old ladies?" But, he sputters, "But I'm the sheriff of Nottingham." The wicked sheriff himself. It's too late to back out now. You remember what Little John said about the nurse. "I don't care if you're the sheriff of Timbuktu. You should have better manners, young man. I don't know what kind of home you were brought up in, but in my day we had a little respect for poor, helpless old women." "I'm sorry," the sheriff says, looking sheepish. He helps you up, dusts you off, and then, to your delight, slinks off down the hall, looking ashamed of himself. The guard unlocks the door to Marian's room. Inside, a lady in green is doing chin-ups on the top beam of a big tapestry loom. "I'll be back in 10 minutes to let you out," says the guard. He locks the door behind him, leaving you alone with the athletic lady, who is regarding you with a very suspicious eye. You stare at the woman hanging from the beam. She is as small and lithe as a boy. "Good grief," you exclaim. "You can't be Maid Marian. Why, she's just some silly grown-up lady." She does a double flip onto the floor. "Nevertheless, I am the Lady Marian, and I was silly enough to get caught spying. Now I'm stuck in this tiny room. I'll lose all the strength in my bow arm if I don't exercise. I just hope the loom doesn't break." "Fear not," you cry in your best heroic manner. "You will not be here much longer. I come for..." Marian stuck her hand over your mouth. "I can guess who you come from," she whispers, trying not to laugh. "And so will the god outside if you're not careful. Come over by the window and tell me all." You soon explain everything. But when she hears the plan, she says, "Isn't that just like Little John rushing in without thinking things through? Robin would never have allowed it. How can I go free, leaving you here in danger? The sheriff is a cruel man." "I'm not afraid," you say, wishing your knees didn't feel quite so weak. Marian is frowning in concentration. "There must be another way to do this." If you agree that she can't just leave you here, turn to page 48.
Marian has come up with a plan that will let both of you escape. "The sheriff just left me to get some ink," she says. "He wants me to sign a paper saying I agree to marry Sir Guy. You stand behind the door, and when he comes back, hit him over the head with this bass recorder. Then I'll change into his clothes, make myself look fat by stuffing them with tapestry yarn, and we'll escape together in disguise." "But you don't look a bit like the sheriff," you object. "Don't worry, I'll cover my face," she says. "Now hide yourself, I hear him coming." One good knock on the head, and the sheriff goes out like a light. Marian changes into his fancy clothes and wraps a cloth around her face, as if it were a bandage for a sore tooth. As the two of you go out the door, she leans her head on your shoulder, moaning, "Ugh." "His Excellency has a bit of a toothache," you tell the guards. But don't worry, old nurse is going to fix him up. Come along, young man. If you didn't eat so many sweets, you wouldn't be in this fix, and you wouldn't be so fat, either." Once you're outside the castle and into the forest, you and Marian laugh so hard you can barely breathe. Then she leads you to the outlaw camp. Robin Hood is delighted that you've rescued Marian. He declares a feast in your honor and insists you take a bag of gold as a reward. The outlaws beg you to stay and join their band. Robin says he'll give you archery lessons, and Marian promises to teach you how to move silently in the woods. In the end, you decide to stay. You have become an outlaw of Sherwood Forest. The end.
If you insist that she escape now, turn to page 33. Please don't argue, Marian, you say sternly. This may be your only chance. Anyhow, I'm not really this fat. You pull the stuffing out of your disguise. Part of this is a rope I'm going to escape with once you're safely away. Before she can insist that she use the rope while you get out the safe way, you take off the old lady clothes. Marian disguises herself as the nurse, and you struggle into her long gown. Just as you're doing the last button, the guard comes to the door. You turn your back and look out the window so he can't see your face, and Marian hides hers in a handkerchief. It works. Marian leaves with him. Soon you hear the old nurse crying and sobbing about Marian all the way down the hall. With Marian on her way, you turn your attention to your escape plan. You're in the highest tower, about 5 stories above the ground. There's a deep moat below, and you're not sure if the rope is long enough. There's a knock on the door. Who is it? You ask, trying to sound like Marian. "'Tis Guy of Gisborne, your own true love," the voice answers. You want to give Marian a chance to get safely away from the castle, but now might be the time to use the ladder. If Guy finds out you're a fake, you could be in real trouble. If you decide to escape now, turn to page 39. If you decide to stall for time, turn to page 94. All right, let's escape. With shaking hands, you tie one end of the rope to a ring in the wall. "Just a minute," you call to Sir Guy. "I'm, fixing my hair." "I can wait," he says in a smooth voice. "For soon you'll be mine, all mine, and once we're joined together forever in the bonds of holy..." The rest of his speech is lost as you begin to lower yourself out the window. You don't dare look down. Your sweating hands are slippery on the rope. The skirts of Marian's gowns are getting in your way. If only you can escape undetected. Suddenly you hear a voice from the roof shouting, "Marian's escaping! Stop her!" Turn to page 20. You feel a jerk on the rope. Sir Guy, the jerk, has reached the window, and he has begun to haul you up. You take a deep breath and let go. You hit the moat with a big splash. The water is murky and green. Marian's skirts are dragging you down. You struggle to get out of the gown, but it's hopeless. If only you hadn't fallen asleep in that fairy ring, none of this would have happened. Okay, fair folk, you think if you ever wanted to help me, now's the time. Nothing happens. The water swirls around your eyes as you sink. Your nose is full of water. You're sinking, sinking. Then you hear a voice shouting, "Kick! Kick!" You kick, and you realize there are no longer any skirts entangling your legs. You come to the surface, gasping for air, and see the Camp Yucky-Phooey swim coach. "Stroke! Kick!" he yells at you. "Honestly, how are you ever going to learn if you don't follow instructions?" It's the first time you've ever been glad to see the swim coach. The end. Huh. Well, that's an abrupt ending. I'm not sure how I got back to my own time, but hey, at least I'm not dead. Okay, let's go back to the beginning now, and we'll try a different path. So we've seen what happens if you both attack the castle or rescue Marian. But that happened when I looked for my arrow under the cover of the sun. So what would have happened if I'd waited to go out in the moonlight?